Clint reached out to me and it was like, oh, somebody knows that I'm obsessed with this book.
I had been stalking him.
Somebody's plugged into the frequency of my brain.
Now, next up, we have Train Dreams, the new Netflix film adapted from Dennis Johnson's acclaimed novella. Set in the American West at the turn of the 20th century, Train Dreams tells the story of Robert Grenier, a railroad worker whose life is quietly shaped by love, loss, and the passage of time. It's a haunting and deeply human portrait of solitude and memory, connection, and the ways we find meaning. Please welcome to the stage some of the incredible talent behind this beautiful film. Co-writer and director, Clint Bentley. And starring in the lead role as Robert, please welcome the brilliant Joel Edgerton. And as Robert's beloved wife, Glattis, Felicity Jones. And please welcome the fabulous Kerry Condon, starring as Claire. And Grammy-winning musician and member of the National, composer Bryce Dessner. So Clint, let's start with you. You're no stranger to writing amazing screenplays. You and your filmmaking partner, Greg Kuidar, were Oscar nominated for Sing Sing last year. And I just was curious about how this came to you as a project that you wanted to dig into putting on the screen. I know Dennis's novella was a real favorite of yours. He's your favorite writer. I believe you told me that. I hope I'm right.
I love him very much. I think he's a great writer. Yeah, I was a big fan of his for a long time. This was actually the first book of his that I stumbled upon back when it came out. And then it just kind of like, I didn't think about it. I read all of his other work, but the novella just kind of stuck with me. And then there were some great producers at Kamala Films who had the rights to the book and were wanting to get it adapted. They saw my film Jockey and reached out, and reading it again and thinking about it as a movie, I just fell in love with it all over again and felt like it could be something very special. It was so poetic. It's so beautiful as a book.
So in the clip, we heard Will Patton's amazing voiceover. Could you tell the story of how you came to choose him? Because it's a really great story about a road trip you took with Greg and what you listened to.
Well, when we were in the process of writing the book, Greg and I made a trip up to, it's set in Bonners Ferry up in the panhandle of Idaho. And so research was always a big part of how we've written our scripts. And it's hard to research something that happened in the early 1900s. But we went up to the area to see what was there, where the book is set and where Dennis lived a long time. And on that trip, I'd read the book like 5 times by that point, trying to like get into it and figure it out. And we started listening to it on audiobook. The audiobook is narrated by Will Patton. And I just felt like I had never, hearing him read it, I felt like I'd never read it before. And I was hearing all these new things in it. And then so by the time we got to the end of the edit and it's like, okay, who do we find for the narrator now? I wanted this feeling that like you've got somebody, if you like stumbled into a bar in a logging town and this guy at the bar starts like telling you the story of Robert Grenier after he's had a couple beers, wanted to feel like that. And Will just felt perfect for it. And he was friends with Dennis Johnson in his life. Like it all just felt very, very special.
That feels like a bit of kismet that they were friends too. And speaking of kismet, Joel, I bet you know what I'm going to ask you now, because there is an amazing coincidence behind the reason you came to this project. Could you tell us that story?
Well, it feels like a coincidence and it's kind of not, that I had read the novella. It had been gifted to me by somebody who I think knew that I would like it. And I had read the book and inquired after the rights for it as a filmmaker. I think like Clint, I realized there was a really interesting movie inside of it. As challenging as it is to adapt, I think if anyone's read the novella, it doesn't immediately scream like, oh, this is like just adapted and there's a movie ready to go. It spans such a long period of time, and the structure of it is complicated and so on. But I did sense that it would be a good idea. Found out the rights were taken and put the whole idea out of my mind. And then about 4 years ago, Clint reached out to me, and it was like, oh, somebody knows that I'm obsessed with this book.
I had been stalking him.
Somebody's plugged into the frequency of my brain, you know, like, and I'm not I'm quite a cynical person. I'm not somebody that believes in that kind of thing, obviously. And it wasn't true. It's just happened but maybe it meant that I was connected to the story and felt like it suited me. And maybe somebody else did too, which is, I think, what Clint recognized. And interestingly enough, when I first read the novella, I was not a father and not a husband. And then when Clint reached out to me, I was. My kids were about 1.5 years old. And of course, because of so much of what happens in the story, I'm so much better suited for it now. It's far more terrifying for me, the things within it. And I therefore felt like I'd grown into a more suitable Robert than I was when I had imagined it before.
You mentioned about how the novella doesn't immediately occur to you as something that you would put on screen, and it's, you know, down to Clint that it works so perfectly in terms of, you know, the cinematography and Bryce's score and the way everything comes together is this beautiful lyrical piece. Can you talk about how you and Felicity work together to create this kind of amazing connection, and we really feel like we know what's going on with them even though they speak very little? It's extraordinary, really.
Well, I will say just quickly about it that one of the reasons why it doesn't scream out like, you know, this needs to be a movie is its protagonist is somebody who is not necessarily at the kind of reins of life. It's not like overly active, and it's a celebration of an ordinary life. And in Clint's hands, it becomes a heroic protagonist that finds the heroic nature or fabric of an otherwise ordinary life. And within an ordinary life, and why it connects, I think, with audiences, because of the universality of these things. And one of those things is falling in love. You know, despite what period you're looking at, I think it's something we all relate to: the finding of love, the building of a family, and what happens if those things if they go away. And so one of the most important things is that the audience invests in our relationship. And there's something, I think, you know, in Clint's writing and then in our relationship that is beautiful and romantic and yet clunky, and there's tension in it. And it feels to me, from within it anyway, like a real relationship. And that was because of our, you know, we'd had a desire to work together for a long time, and it nearly happened before, and then we finally got the chance. I think there was an excitement there, but I think we got to have such a great free time on set, following the script, but also building moments together that weren't in the script.
Felicity, can you talk a bit about how you worked with Joel together to find those moments that weren't necessarily in the script? Because it does feel so organic when you see them together. It's almost, they're barely saying anything, but they're saying everything. And I love the way that Glattis is so forward for a woman of her time too. Can you talk about that?
Yeah, I mean, the film, it pivots from being this from these, as you say, these really intimate moments, these really domestic moments, these silly little moments that everyone recognizes that you have in relationships. And then that is put into relief by the huge themes in the film, which is what I loved about it when I read the script, was that it was asking, you know, ultimately, what is the point of why we're all here? What, you know, and finding out what that point is partly through when people die and grief and knowing things aren't going to last forever. And therefore, how does that affect how we behave in everyday life? And it's so rare to find a screenplay that can really unpack that in a really emotional way. So our job was to just find all that kind of idiosyncrasy, and to make sure that it felt really relatable ultimately, and relaxed and easy, and that there was and that you have to feel as soon as these two people meet that that's it. They're locked in. There's destiny will take its path, but that you totally believe in their compatibility and their love. And I think so much of that came from just an easy, relaxed atmosphere, improvisation, playfulness, trying things out, and then some brilliant editing as well. That always helps.
Did you do any research into that era or women of that era at all?
Yeah. As you were asking, I mean, they were just kind of incredible. These courageous homesteaders, really. They traveling from vast distances. Got to the east coast of America and then continued over to the west. So in that particular area, the people who lived there, were so hardy, just absolutely, invincible to survive the conditions they were under. And as you see in the film, they're really struggling. It's a fight to get the money together to eat every day. And so what she has to do is use her resources. She's near a river, so she's got to start fishing. She's got to grow vegetables, and you just so much of a part of it was just the sheer absolute determination of these people, and the fight for survival ultimately.
It's extraordinary. Kerry, now your character, speaking to what Felicity just said about the importance of sort of living off the land and the nature, your character creates this kind of bridge for Joel's character, Robert, where she helps him to understand his place in the world and how nature can be a kind of centering part of that. And you yourself have a farm, and I was really curious about how you connected to Claire and what she means to you.
That was the main reason I wanted to do the movie, was the nature aspect of the movie, that nature is almost like another character in the movie. And there's a spiritual side to nature that like heals people. And yeah, I have a farm in Washington. We shot it in Washington, Pacific Northwest. So yeah, just, it wasn't very far from where I have the farm. And when we shot it too, the sun was going down, and it felt very spiritual. And that time of the evening when the birds are chirping, and I think when you're filming sort of outside and anything happens, it feels like it was meant to be, because it's captured and we have it captured forever, and that's never going to happen again. So all those things made it feel beautiful, and I think it feels beautiful. The movie feels very spiritual. It's really moving. Even in happy moments, you're like moved to tears. So yeah, and I felt very similar to my character.
I really love how the message she tries to give him, ultimately it lands with him at the end, but I won't spoil it.
Yeah, I didn't want to spoil it either. So,
but it is so beautiful. So
thank you.
Bryce, I did want to ask you about scoring this movie, because you had a little bit of an unusual process in terms of how the score was built in tandem with Clint's process, and you recorded in a very specific location. Can you tell us about that?
Yeah, thank you. This is the fourth film we've worked on together with Clint. Yes. And so we have a long, including Sing Sing was the last one. So there's a lot of trust and sort of understanding between us, which is not always the case when you score a film. Usually writing music for films, it's one of the last things that happens. Sometimes it can be a very quick and fraught process. This was the opposite, where we were talking about this film for a long time before they shot it. The book I knew well, and the script. I had a lot of information kind of building up to when Clint began shooting it. So I also chose this after having done some other projects. A lot of time, also film music, you end up kind of in a computer watching picture, and that's a beautiful process as well, because you can dream a million things before you start working on a film, and ultimately the picture asks for the music. So you can do a million. I remember for The Revenant, which is in a way something similar, where it was set in the American West, I wrote like 2 hours of cello music before I saw a picture, and none of it worked. So this is an interesting process where I decided to kind of go into old recording studios, actual analog studios, and play old pianos with ribbon RCA microphones. 75% of the score is recorded in Portland, Oregon, with members of the Oregon Symphony. I was there on tour and had a week off. And there's a beautiful studio there called Flora, where a lot of, classic REM records were made, or some of the national records were recorded in there. Has, tons of old analog gear. This is not typically the stuff that's being used on Hollywood scores these days. So there's an intimate kind of analog feeling in the music, and that really I felt empowered to do it. So I recorded a bunch of probably 10 or 12 kind of primary themes for this film prior to seeing music. Prior to seeing picture, I was being sent dailies and rushes by Clint, so I had an idea that it would work. And that's what ended up really populating a lot of the film. And it was just a beautiful, again, I think I really relate to what Kerry said about nature, and about there's a lot of silence and space and just incredible performances from these actors. So to be with them and to, offer music to that is a real honor, and a great process for me.
Thank you. I feel like the music is its own character, as we were saying. And I just want to urge you all to see this film. It's so beautiful. It really stays with you. Congratulations to all of you. Thank you so much for being here to talk about Train Dreams.
Thank you.
Thank you all very much.